All right, that's another basic example. I'm trying to make these bite size, and I apologize for the ugly form, but let me just run it and show you what it does. So when you run it, it has a couple of labels, and it's saying, hey, please enter a date, and then it's got today's date. So what we'll do is enter a date. Let me think of a good one. I don't have one off the top of my head except, Independence Day. I'll just make up one. So let's just do this. 3, 6, 10, 66. That's not the Battle of Hastings, but it's the same year as it. I don't know what the actual date was. So I type in a date with using slashes like you're used to and click submit. And you see it figures out that it was March 6, 1666 on a Tuesday, apparently. Hey Google, when was the Battle of Hastings?
The Battle of Hastings date is October 14th, 1066.
October 14th, so it's not too long from the anniversary. There we go. So you can see I can type that in and it figures out somehow what the actual day is. Keep in mind, it's taking a string that's in a text box, because the text property of a text box is a string. And somehow it's figuring out what the date is, because what I'm displaying is the long form date from a date variable. And I'll show you that in a second. But before I do that, let's do this. October 14th, 1066. Well, let's do October, the day before. Let's do Battle of Hastings Eve, just to show you it works, because you didn't really see anything change. So there you go. All right, so how's this working? Let's exit and look at the button here. So first of all, what I do is in my form load, I was like, please enter date, and then I get today's long date, and I just put that on the load, I put that into the two labels. So always maybe use this code folding so you can see the structure of your form class. By the way, I just keep thinking about this as we're doing things. It's a good idea to understand the structure of a form and where everything's happening. All right. So the button, it's a click event of the button. Is it still called in program? I didn't change it to. I thought I changed it to submit, but let me pause and do that. Okay, I probably should have just done it and shown you. I just did a refactor here on this because it was renamed, the button was, but the event handler wasn't, of course. It's not going to automatically change that for you. So let's see what it does. So when I click on the button for submit, this button right here, after I type in the day, what it will do is it will do a TryParse. So this is on page 261 in your text. It tells you how to do this. You can use the TryParse method of the date time to take a string and see if it can figure out what the actual date is, and so it can store it. Keep in mind, when it stores the date, it's storing it in one specific bit pattern that I don't even know the structure of. We could probably look it up, but it's probably divided up, it actually might even just be seconds since time began. It could just be that one value, and then it divides it up in it does computations on it depending on what you're looking for, months and years and days and stuff, days of the week, what have you. But regardless of what the bit pattern is, it's always the same bit pattern. So it's taking that string that I wrote in the text box, which is in the text property of the text box, and it's it's parsing it to figure out what the time it needs to convert it to for a date time is. And then if it can figure it out, and of course, technically, this should all be in a try catch, right? Because it might not figure it out, and we'll show what happens when it doesn't. But it figures out the actual date that needs to store into this date, user entered date, right? This is a date time. When it figures out what it stores in there, if it does it successfully, it will store it in there, and then it will return true that it was successful in doing that. So that's why I have if success here. This is data validation, by the way, as opposed to exception handling. It's validating that the date in here is some kind of recognizable date time. And then I just enter that into the label that says please enter date. I change it to where it shows what the date the user entered was. And I don't do any computation since since how many days or seconds since Battle of Hastings occurred. I don't bother with that in this one. You've already seen that example. But this just to show you how to like the TryParse works. So you saw what worked. The slashes worked. Typing in like in a traditional way with the month, day, and year. Let's try other things. Like for instance, let's try maybe July 4th this year. So that would be 07. Wait, let's just do 7. 7/4/2020. So just 20. Let's see if this works. I don't actually know if it does. I want to say it doesn't, but let's see. It doesn't, I'm pretty sure. Oh no, it does. Yeah, okay, so it does the 2-year. So it's the settings for this, by the way, when you do database stuff too, there's like all kinds of consternation about this, whether it's going to do 1920 or 2020, because 1920 was not that long ago, and not until not too long ago it would have just done 1920, but now it's doing 2020. So where's the dividing line when it does that or doesn't do it? It's hard to say. For instance, if I put in 71 here, what am I going to get? 1971. How does it know whether I'm talking about 2071 or 1971? That's a good question. But apparently, you can probably look at the documentation of TryParse. I don't care to, because it's not something I need to know right now. But if you run into like records, like let's say you have to write a .NET program in C# that processes a bunch of XML files that have data in them, and the person who compiled the data used 2-digit years, then you're going to have to deal with it and figure out like, is it going to do 71 correctly for 1971? Probably you're not doing the future. Maybe you are doing the future. It's something you have to think about. So that's when you look up the specifications. It's beyond the scope. We're just learning how date times work. We're not like worried about making them work perfectly right now. That's something you can do in the future if you have that problem. And I honestly, I don't know. It's the kind of stuff you look up, right? What else could we try? Let's see. 8th of October, 1917. I don't know what that's. I don't think that's not a particular date. It is the date. It's the year of the Russian Revolution, but it's not. Which I'm not a fan of, just for the record. But I'm not doing it because I'm a fan. See, I figured that out too. I'm not sure. Let's see. It gives you some valid date formats on 261. All right. The dashes. Right, it'll figure that one out. But let's do something it won't figure out. Surely that's not something it can figure out. So I guess it didn't make it crash, but it didn't set an actual time here. So I'm not sure exactly what it's doing. It's just throwing it away, I guess. But that's not a valid time. Forgot TryParse. Maybe it doesn't generate an exception when it doesn't work. I forgot the specifics on that. Parse probably does though. You got you have parse and TryParse. Anyway, you can see the specifics on that in the book. The important thing is that you know that you can use TryParse to get a date that a human would no more normally type into a text box, and that's the use of it. I guess that'll be the name of this video. I think we're done. It's a little longer than the other ones, but yeah, we'll finish this video and I'll call it TryParse, and then we'll continue on.